let's take all of that and let's go to Billy Joel. We talked
Okay.
about musicology and the study of older music and understanding how it's current. You participated in a book called We Didn't Start the Fire, which was a selection of critical essays about Billy Joel. And Billy
Right.
Joel read it and even wrote a little forward to it. So he apparently liked it. First question I want to ask you is could
I
this
wonder if he read it, but never mind.
oh, he's pretty intellectual now.
Yeah, no, I'm sure he is, but he also has loads of books written about him and, write another forward and yeah, okay.
Well, I challenge Billy Joel to tell us whether or not
Okay.
he
I will ask him
call
trivia
on
about
in,
my
Billy. The
chapter.
phones are live now. So, um, what I want to know, the first question I have is, could this book have been written about any songwriter, or is Billy special, do you suppose?
I'm going to have to say Billy's special, and I know any fan of anyone would say that, but he he acknowledges his classical background, but sort of dismisses it sometimes in interviews, trivializes it. My left hand's pretty good, but not great, and all this kind of stuff. And of course, since the motorcycle accidents, it's tougher to play. Um, but you study classical music, you're a different product. And yes, some people, I guess Billy Joel had a brief period of, I guess, trying to be a delinquent, and trying to be a little rebel and that kind of stuff. And some of us actually don't go through that. You know,
Yeah.
there's enough interest elsewhere in our lives that we don't need to do that. But also, you know, solvent families and so on. But what we have is somebody who has real intellectual gifts, real piano gifts, um, could figure it out socially. So he had himself a pretty good social life, playing rock, and he loved all the different kinds of music. I mean, if you listen to the Billy Joel Sirius channel that occasionally crops up on Sirius FM, Sirius whatever XM, excuse me. There are parts where he's describing hearing Keith Emerson with the Nice, and this real obscurities from his youth. You always want to know what the piano players were doing. That's a lot of very good nutrients to feed into a brain and into a musical soul. And given that he had this long youth, as he said, of playing in bands, cover stuff, and if you've ever people who've seen him live, at least in the old days, know that he used to like to imitate other artists, which could be hilarious when he and the band would do this.
Yeah.
Imitate Paul McCartney, imitate Leon Russell, and it could be just riotously funny. But we've got somebody who's, there's a Gershwin-like aspect to it. He won a Gershwin Prize. But this guy can play. That was the first thing that just floored me about him. This guy could really play. Gershwin could really play. This guy can write melodies. No, it's not Gershwin-esque. But he can write melodies. And one gets the impression that he tried to be a rock star for a long time, but he was always going to be more than a songwriter because his songs are more interesting. There's a review. I'm trying to recall if I quoted it. I might have quoted it in the essay. It's been a while since I looked at it. Robert Christgau, maybe one of the big rock critics. I think it was him, who, like some people, had this pose of hating Billy Joel at the beginning, which is a common thing. And there was a wonderful one of his records came out, and this guy reviewed it, and there was this wonderful passage where he said, "Oh, you know what? I give up. I just give up. I can't bother to hate this guy anymore. He never gives up. He never throws away a break, a middle eight. He's always working on doing something better and getting it more interesting." And it's like Billy Joel broke this critic, just by sheer, what would I say, excellence.
Persistence. Yeah.
And when I read that passage, one thing occurred to me immediately, and that was Until the Night. off 52nd Street. Yeah, it's a Righteous Brothers tribute, but there is such craft, and the way he modulates a third away with a common tone. Sorry, piano talk. In for the middle eight, for the the break, that just, I mean, that is astounding songwriting. And he still, he started out playing like a demon and playing dives.
Yeah.
So no, he comes from a different background. He also comes from educated people. Whether he, I know this story about it's either going to be Columbia University or Columbia Records, and it's going to be Columbia Records.
Right.
Yeah, okay. I mean, he probably likes to tell stories like that. And he probably got a kick out of being the smartest kid in class and rebelling and dropping out, as people do.
Right.
As a teacher, I'm not that impressed with that kind of attitude. but but he had resources. Yes, he's in Hicksville. He's in, the not the nicest areas of New York. He had resources at home that other people don't have, and he used them. So I I would have difficulty comparing him to somebody else. One of my other favorite artists at the time was Alan Price. This was at the time that Oh Lucky Man came out, and Between Two Daniels. Price doesn't read music. So he's good, writes good songs, doesn't read music. There's Billy Joel is the elements, get Shakespearean. The elements are so mixed in him, that to me, he really stands alone.
Let me address some of that. One of the things I liked about your essay in the book, I wasn't able to read the whole book because I don't have that, but I did read your essay. And one of the things I really liked was that you, of course, critics have panned him his whole career, so that critically he's been seen as a kind of a fake or a failure. And popularly, he's always been great. Maybe a lull in the 90s and O's, but now he's back and bigger than ever.
Yep.
You were both respectful of his true talents, pointing out the things about him that were really great. And you also, as a musicologist, were critical where you needed to be. You did not worship him. You spoke exactly of his strengths. You talked about the diminishing pianistic abilities. I've never heard anybody talk about that. The fact I was always suspecting as I listened, yeah, something's being lost here. Yeah, something's lost. Okay, the motorcycle accidents, he even admits it.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about Billy Joel, the artist. For me, the closest I can think of, this is a strange analogy, perhaps you will find, but Peter Sellers to me reminds me of Billy Joel in that just astounding ability, but so much of that ability is geared towards impersonating other people. So that Billy Joel's ability to mock, well, I don't want to say mock because that's derivative, to use the influence to sound like, for me, what's often lost is the man himself. And it slips through in a couple of songs, most notably, for instance, Goodnight, My Angel, which is for me the most authentic he's ever been on a record. But do you find any frustration, as someone who loves him apparently so very much, do you find any frustration with him in that regard?
Let me answer it this way. No, not at all. Because I am somebody who, well, I'm an academic, and I suppose that means something of a bore. And my way of my first instinct, if I find something I love, okay, I learn it on the piano, maybe, or but I want to share it. I want other people to know how wonderful it is. I want to explain it. Billy Joel is somebody who, imitating other artists. I mean, when he imitates the way Leon Russell sings, or when he imitates the way this, that, or the other thing, that's one thing. And that's funny, and that's entertainment. When he writes Until the Night or Baby Grand or something like that, that is a full out tribute. And the greatest classical composers compose full out tributes. and maybe it didn't quite come out sounding like the artist they worshipped, Mozart composing the Haydn quartets, Beethoven composing the C minor concerto that reflects Mozart's K491 in C minor in numerous ways. You're paying homage to people who came before you. I'm sorry, that is not fake. That is as authentic as it is possible for an artist to be. And you will find this in the Renaissance, teaching the Renaissance now because we're at that point of the year. Renaissance church music, they cherished their masters. They composed tombeaux and homages to them. So I absolutely discredit the idea that that's somehow fake or derivative, or no, taking from the artists you find to be the greatest and building on that. I mean, I can't think of anything more authentic than that. So yeah, you get the different angles. I mean, like all people, like all really good songwriters, he writes about himself, and then he realizes you can write about other things too, somewhere in the career, and the view gets wider. But I know people get tired of Piano Man. That was the first song that just grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, threw me on the ground, and wait a minute, it can't be like that. It can be like that. You can do that. It's okay to do that. And that whole album. Then I went to Tower Records in LA and found an original copy in those years of Cold Spring Harbor. And, too fast with the
Right.
fast speed and all that.
Right.
And was, playing that stuff by ear. And, he's very amusing when he talks about it, particularly The Falling of the Rain. A song he hates the lines of, and it's so sentimental, blah, blah, blah. I'll just paraphrase a friend of mine who said, "Oh, is that how he feels about it? Well, the hell with him. I could listen to that all day."
Yeah.
And I kind of appreciate that too. Yeah, oh, you don't think so highly of it. Well, you know what? It belongs to us now, not you. So we thank you. You know. But no, he's sui generis. There aren't others like him. And the idea of I think there are a variety of reasons people criticized him. I was a super fan. As soon as I heard that second album, I was just crazed, off the chart, in his court. I paid for it with a lot of my friends. Um, if you're interested in listening to the Stones, Billy Joel somehow doesn't sound as raw as or as contemptuous as Mick and Keith, right?
Right.
Okay, but if you think, I'm sorry, if you think that's those kids from art school, if you think that is somehow more authentic than what, Billy from Hicksville is writing, even though they were completely open about the fact that they were trying to be black bluesmen, the Stones, I mean.
Yeah.
Brian Jones in an early performance giving himself the name Elmo Lewis. I'm sorry, we can discuss what authentic is. It isn't that. And Billy's songwriting is more city. He's not trying to be a rural blues man. It's more city. It reflects more city concerns, urban stuff, So if you don't find that authentic, maybe you're going to have to tell everybody in cities that they're not authentic. Oh, wait a minute. Only the inner cities, like Detroit, is authentic, but not a Jewish kid from, Hicksville.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm getting at?
I do.
Critical, all that crap breaks down. And of course, then you get into the gender issue where the cover of Piano Man was androgynous. And in those days, the smoking had not taken its toll on his voice. And so he would sing this almost operatic, light, easy, high parts. And all the real studs in high school, what is that, a girl? And so I think there's also an element of that in the Billy Joel reception, which amounts to nothing. I mean, he was always, as somebody once wrote, he always lived his life on the simplest setting in that aspect. But I think that also, there was just something about it that, really set people off. He could really play the piano. I don't think he ever, he doesn't have a history of putting a needle in his arm, I don't think.
He said he tried heroin one time, at least in the interview that I read.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Well, sorry to hear that.
Well, he apparently didn't like it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's wise.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was gigging. He was writing songs. He was playing the piano. Guy had to make a living. It's not like he wasn't busy.
Well, maybe he dropped acid. I don't think it was heroin. It must have been acid. I believe that was it. Let's get set the record straight.
But this is he'll go to the he'll smoke a couple of cigarettes and have an open bottle near him, and that's that part of life. He's not disappearing down the the morphine hole or whatever.
Well, let's nerd out just a little bit more.
Sure.
I don't know to what extent you're a fan of Elvis Costello or Joe Jackson. Here are two other artists who do pay serious homage, and Joe Jackson can really play. So how are you comparing Billy Joel perhaps to them? Do you find them peers, or do you still put Billy up at the top?
Well, I don't know. Joe Jackson, I really never heard much of after that first album.
Which first album?
When he went into jumpin' jazz, I wasn't.
Okay.
I've never been a jazz guy, so I never heard much of him after that. Elvis Costello, I know some of his things, and it's I think it's something like Veronica.
Sure.
Like a Beatles tribute, right?
Well, it was a Paul McCartney co-write.
Oh, was it? I didn't even know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
That's him on the bass. In fact, Paul is on the bass in that song. Okay, so you have a lot of good stuff coming to you. If you haven't heard Joe Jackson's records or Elvis Costello, we'll talk. There's a lot.
As I that reminds me of something funny. I did an early article on Raga Rock. Okay, Beatles, Yardbirds, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And my brother has a huge rock collection. I mean, endless. So what I did, my research method for that was, Joel, what, exoticism in rock, what have you got? And so I started him off. Well, let's see. I've got a book about the Yardbirds. I've got a book about the Who. I've got this. I've got that. So I was up at, was I at Stanford? I published it here, but I feel like I maybe did the research at Stanford when I was still there or something. But I said, send me what you've got. I remember a phone call where he was playing me different versions of Running Bear Loves Little White Dove, Indianist rock, and over the phone. So I gave a paper at DU, I don't know, 1995, University of Denver. And after I gave the paper, much of the audience just went forward up to where I was speaking. I was the last in the group, and they surrounded me and, oh, that's so cool. And where did you get this? And where did you get that? And I said, yeah, I have access to the Joel Bellman listening archive. And then to see all these sort of, I was relatively new in this job, and they were established, tenured people at other universities, and to see their shoulders slump, oh. And I thought, lucky again,
Yeah.
But the thing that sets Billy Joel apart from me is the piano and the classical background. And that, you know, that's, I'm a lot more competent to talk about that than I am to talk about what Joe Jackson got or what, you know, Elvis Costello got.
Okay.
I mean, my musical interests range widely, but I came to music through the piano, like a lot of people do. And so the composers I tend to know least about are those who didn't write for piano.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my door into everything. So I hear Billy Joel, and you know, I'm there already.